Hey Wargamers, welcome back to the channel, Death from Above Wargaming. I'm Aaron, and tonight I have an exciting, very special Battlytics review. This one has been asked for across the Inner Sphere and beyond. We are finally going to take a look at the Kodiak. So this beast was featured in a campaign we did at the end of 2023, where Tom took on the role of young Thor. A fledgling star captain who invaded Draconis Combine in a Kodiak. Lots of fun was had. If you haven't seen that campaign, definitely check it out. But into the numbers here, let's take a look at this 100-ton beast. This thing is absolutely insane. It's got a battle value of 2927, which doesn't seem that high when talking about clan 100-ton mechs, but it is. It was produced in 3001. And it moves pretty well, 4/6. It does dissipate 40 points of heat thanks to 20 double heat sinks, and it has a respectable 280 pips of armor, which translates into 17.5 tons of standard clan armor. So if we look at the armor diagram in the center, coverage looks good. Don't really see any weak spots. The legs maybe are the weakest out of everything, but again, this thing is so meaty. I don't know. We'll see. I have high hopes for the Kodiak, especially when looking at the armament. 4 ER medium lasers on each arm. So it's a total of 8 clan ER medium lasers. That is a pair of Streak SRM6s. There's an ER large laser, and of course, the mighty Ultra Autocannon 20. Now, the UAC only does have 10 shots, which means you could rapid fire it for 5 turns. But, I mean, let's face it, that's like 200 points of damage. So, pretty significant amount of damage just coming out of that weapon alone, let alone the myriad of other death-dealing devices equipped on this thing. So, will it be good? Will it be a flop? I think we're all leaning towards good, but let's see what Battlytics has to say. Guys, stay tuned. Kodiak coming right up. All right, diving right into the offensive benchmarks here. So what do we got? It's all over the place. I mean, the numbers are so high. Look at the heat. It's up, it's down. This thing can do all sorts of things. I mean, with 8 ER mediums alone, it's generating crap loads of heat, let alone the ER large, the UAC, and those Streak SRM6s. But baseline damage, that means if we keep it under a respectable 4 points of heat, the baseline damage is 386.6 points. That is very, very high. If we optimize it, we take on a little bit of heat, we can bump that number up to 401.8. Now, what's funny is if you lay on the trigger like a noob slice and you just build up all the heat, your damage will drop all the way down to 163. So you can see this thing really is penalized by those gunnery penalties, right, by that heat buildup. So this is definitely a mech that will do better if you keep it cool. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't take those alpha strikes when you have like that glorious opportunity and you're looking at a shutdown Atlas, but really keeping this thing running cool will pay dividends over the long haul. So speaking of heat real quick, let's just, since it has so many freaking weapons, let's talk about the heat that it does. So each ER medium laser builds up 5 points of heat. So it can build up 40 points of heat just with the ER medium laser. So it will saturate its heat sinks, right, which are 40. I mean, it's 20 double heat sinks, so it can dissipate 40. So the ER medium lasers alone, if it's standing still, will saturate your heat sinks. Now, firing everything else, assuming you're double tapping that Ultra Autocannon, 34 additional points of heat. So you could shut this thing down in a trigger pull, which is amazing. So as you can see in the peak heat and the key metrics on the right, 35 at 10 inches. So once it gets into 10 inches, and those, I guess the streaks come into play, it can build up, that's basically when it can build up 35 points of heat. Or at least that's in the simulation when it built up peak heat, so 35 points of heat. And the extra point, by the way, it's 34 from the weapons, 1 for walking, so that's where the 35 comes from. That's crazy. And that's with 40 double heat sinks, so it can shut itself down in 1 alpha strike. So anyway, back to the lethality index. Let's see what this thing can do. Not surprisingly, it killed the Javelin 100% of the time, and it did so in 6.86 turns. Now, that number shocked me a little bit. I thought it was going to be a lot quicker. But I think the thing to realize here is that it has 12 different weapons, right? 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 different weapons. I don't have enough fingers to count all the weapons this thing has. It's a lot. So you're going to shotgun. Now, the UAC-20, if it hits and you land 2 solid shots, it's going to just obliterate that Javelin. But it does take some time for that thing to come into range. Long range on that is 12 inches. Same thing with the streaks. So at the end of the day, it's a death-dealing machine. It can deal tons of damage, but it is not necessarily like a scalpel, right? It is a sledgehammer, perhaps fitting of the Ghost Bear Warrior. So anyway, let's take a look at defense. All right, so on the defensive side, we've got pretty good armor coverage. It is maxed out on the side torsos. Center torso looking very strong. Again, the legs were slightly under armored. Torso is maxed out in the rear. But the legs, again, the legs being quote unquote under, we're talking a few pips. And obviously there's no impact emotive. It saw only 0.4% of the time it took motive critical hits. Now, in the legs, it does have heat sinks, so all those leg criticals are packed out. So I think that's a contributing factor. And also the legs still have 34 pips of armor and 21 structure. So 34 pips of armor that you have to get through. That's 3 solid PPC shots it can take and still have armor left over. So I don't think I would read too much into that under average on the legs. It's doing very well there. Now, in terms of survivability overall, 93.7%, so it's a very strong number. And if you look at the survivability curve, it's almost like a pool table. It's very, very flat. I mean, it does dip off a little bit at the end, but it's not like an exponential dump or degradation. It's pretty linear once it starts to lose. So that's pretty good, I think, overall. I mean, what that shows me is this thing is very, very tough. Most of the deaths coming from actually coring it out and destroying it, even more so than engine deaths, which is shocking because it does have an XL engine. So if you have to kill this thing, you got to kill it the hard way. So that's very, very positive there. Now, let's take a look at the efficiency numbers. All right, so here it is, 93.7% survivability. Survey says 9.52 for efficiency. That's very, very good. Now, of course, everyone was hoping for over 10, but I think that's a very, very strong number. And again, is reinforced by the performance of the Kodiak in our most recent campaign. A couple of things to note: the damage loss is only 2.9%. That means our simulated damage versus the damage you would expect when it's under fire and actually dying on the tabletop. There's only a 2.9% difference. So that's very, very good as well. And that contributes, again, to just good numbers across the board, good survivability. There's no obvious weak spots in this thing. You got to kill it the hard way. And meanwhile, it is just spitting punishment at anything that comes near it. It's impressive all around. The other thing I wanted to call out is gunnery sensitivity. So 0.77, 0.772 if we want to get precise. That's a very good number. What that shows us is that it does respond very, very well to increases in gunnery. So if you look at a gunnery 4 pilot, the efficiency is 7.4. It increases by over 1 whole efficiency point, basically, at gunnery 3, and then almost another 1 full efficiency point at gunnery 2, and then it sort of tapers off between gunnery 1 and gunnery 0. But that's very good, and I think it sort of signals that you want to put at least a gunnery 3, gunnery 2 if you can, pilot in there. Again, anything over gunnery 2, you sort of start to lose your return on investment because the cost is so high. And in a mech of this scale, where like the starting battle value is 3,001, it can get extremely expensive very quickly. So with a gunnery 2 pilot in there, that's where the simulation is done at. All of the simulations here, it would be about 4,098 battle value. Now, of course, that needs to be adjusted for piloting. That's just if you would increase the gunnery. So it would be a little bit more than that if you ran like a 2-4 or something along those lines. But overall, very, very impressed by the numbers here. Low damage loss, high survival, just gobs of damage across the board too. But speaking of that, let's take a look at threat and talk about how we would use the Kodiak on the table. All right, so here it is, the threat analysis, how I would use the Kodiak on the table. Sledgehammer. So first and foremost, Brawler. Look at the Alpha Strike potential, 130 points of damage. If like the dice gods are smiling and everything hits, you're just going to massacre somebody. And it's very, very like doable with streak 6s and ultra autocannon 20s, where like that's where a lot of your variability comes in. I mean, you get locks, you get a couple of good dice rolls, everything's hitting on the laser side. Like you could absolutely decimate, again, 130 points of damage. That's a single Alpha Strike. Now, granted, you'll shut down, but you're almost guaranteed to kill anything that is damaged, significantly damaged. Like if you got like a assault mech, even at 50%, like you're going to knock it out of commission if you're able to land all these shots. It is disgusting amounts of damage. I'd have to go to the books, but I'm not even sure if anything is higher than this in terms of Alpha Strike. Let me know. We just did the one with the Hag 40s. I don't even think that Alpha Strike was bigger than this, but I digress. So let's take a look at some of the hallmarks here. So first and foremost, this thing does have an ER large laser. That is a support weapon. That is just to help you close. Anybody that's standing outside of 15 inches or 15 hexes and is just using their ER large laser, I hate to say it, but you're doing it wrong. You got to get those lasers, those medium lasers, into play as quickly as possible. The Kodiak does have the speed to close with most other assaults. So, definitely get those in play. Once those ER mediums are in play, I think you're in business. And again, like if you look at the threat assessment chart, like there is a massive jump between 15 and 12, but don't let your eyes deceive you. The scaling of this is up to 140 points of damage. Like that jump from, whatever that is, 70 something points of damage up to 130 is insane. Like most mechs can't do that. So even just doing that 70-ish points of damage from the large laser and the 8 mediums is a lot. I wouldn't advise firing all of those things. We talked about this before because you want to keep the mech cool. But you can fire, 4 ER mediums and ER large, right? All of these different combinations. Definitely, I think the ER large is a moneymaker. It's probably as good, if not, I think a little bit stronger than the ER than a couple of ER mediums, just from like a heat perspective, damage perspective, mainly because the range bands are so good. So you're going to be able to hit more with it because you're going to have a better target mod. But anyway, how I would play this on the field, again, Brawler first and foremost. Secondly is a Vanguard mech. I mean, just in the open, let it draw fire. Let it be that centerpiece mech. It will survive. It will do good things for you. And then as a defender, if you need one, and you don't have anything else for this thing to do, it can hold an objective. Nothing's going to want to come anywhere near it. And as long as it has targets, again, within that 15 hex, 15-inch range, it should be doing fine. Just one other note, it doesn't have a ton of capabilities in the rear arc. It doesn't have any rear-mounted weapons. But you can torso twist, you can stretch your arm out, and you can fire 4 clan ER medium lasers at something in your rear arc. That's gonna ruin the day of just about anything. Remember, those things do 7 points of damage each, so 28 points of damage just coming from one arm, which is pretty impressive. So That's the Kodiak. Again, excellent efficiency, tremendous damage, excellent spread of weapons. The only things to worry about, again, heat. I would keep the heat under control. And like honestly, that's about it. And the UAC, I would go bananas with it. As soon as it's in range, like I wouldn't conserve your ammo, man. I would double tap the crap out of that thing, especially if you've got targets to kill. Like just go for it. If it jams, it jams. Like whatever. That's the way of the world. But even if it jams, guys, like you still have 8 trillion other amazing weapons to use, so you might as well use it. Just burn through it. You got 2 Streak 6s with 30 rounds, right? I mean, you can use those if the UAC jams or runs out of ammo. So you have more than enough options. And again, it can't fire everything, because the heat load's way too much. So you might as well burn through that UAC 20 ammo as soon as you can. That's sort of my thought pattern there. But that's all I got. I hope you enjoyed this analysis. A couple of things. Number one, don't forget to check out Aries Games and Minis. Awesome over there. Great prices. Very, very fast shipping. He's got decals. He's got terrain. He's got all of the force boxes, the starter sets, the books, the novels, everything you need. It's over at Aries Games and Minis. So definitely check that out. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Leave a like. As Tom likes to say, smash that like button. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the Kodiak, and if you watched the campaign and what you thought about that, and if it lived up to your expectations. I think everybody. Well, actually, I'm not going to spoil it, so I won't say anything about that. Leave it in the comments. And again, if you want to help out the channel, come on over to Patreon. It's as little as $1 a month to get in on the fun. So that said, that's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed this review on the Kodiak. And of course, stay tuned. Always great stuff coming from Death from Above Wargaming. Have a good night.